Hello everyone, I am Vu and this is CS50 Finance. Before I introduce everyone to my code, let's outline the, um, the steps. So I will open the layout of my website and then we will look a little bit at the code and then we'll go back to test out the features of the website. Alright, so let's do a Flask run. This will take us to our website. So the first function, as we all know, is register. This is a layout of the register route, which contains three fields: username, password, and password confirmation, which I denote as password again, and this is the register button. If we go back to our code and we look at the register route, we can see that inside my register.html, I request for username and password, and here is if request method.get, which takes me to that form. Here I provide a few conditions for the entries to be valid, which contains if not username, elif not password, elif not confirmation, and elif password is different from confirmation. I also check if the username is already taken, and then I provide a hash for the password that the user creates, and I insert the user into our user database. Here I check if the username is not taken by selecting that username and all the information from a database to check if that exists. So here, to test out the features, let me just create another user, which is Bob, with a password of 1234. Register. And as you see, I'm redirected into the login page. Now I would sign in 1234, which logs me in. All right. So as you guys might know, this is the index table, which I'll come up to a minute. But now we will talk about quote. So quote is just like this. You provide a symbol and the lookup function will provide a statement for us. If we go back to quote, this is requesting a symbol from quote.html, and this render the templates of the quoted.html. This is just a dictionary, which is the lookup of that particular symbol. So here I would provide an example of AAPL, which is Apple stock. So as you guys might see, this is a statement of the share and the stock price of Apple stock. A feature of quote is that if you provide the stock name, which is all lowercase, it still provides the same statement. So the next functions must be coherent with this particular feature. And now we will proceed to buy. All right, so it looks a lot familiar with quote. So it has a symbol, a number of shares, and okay. So if we go to the buy function, we can see that here I get the information from the request form, which is buy.html, and I provide a few conditions for it to be for the entries to be valid. Two main features that I want to talk about here is numeric. So this function checks if the get shares contains all characters being numbers. If not, then we return an apology saying that shares must be an integer. Notes that it also eliminates the situation that get shares is a float, because numeric checks if that particular get shares has a dot in it. So and the next feature is symbol.upper. This is coherent with the quote function, which says that if I go back to the code and I enter, for example, AAPL in all lowercase, and I enter a number of shares, for example, 2, and I say buy, I'll be taken to my index table with all of my input to uppercase, which is consistent. All right, so that is by. And the next function is index, which is the default route. Every time we buy, if we look at this table, this is the index table, which contains the stock, the name, the number of shares we currently have, the price of the stock at the particular time now, and the total holding amount of that stock. So, and this is the current balance of the user, and this is the grand total, which is just a sum of all the holdings of the stock and the balance that the user currently has. If we go to the code, it's just extracting a dictionary from our database, which is stocks, which contains all the necessary information of the transaction. Here I manipulate the dictionary in Python, which allows for a little bit simplicity in the SQL database and just manipulating the dictionaries. And here I render template of the index HTML page. And so that is index. Okay, so next up is sell, which is the opposite of buy. So I'm currently only having AAPL, which is the Apple stock right now. And let's say that I want to sell 1 share of AAPL. And now I only have 1 share left. If you go to sell, I also have a few checking for the inputs to be valid, and some of them are if the shares are greater than the number of stocks that the user currently has, or the number of stock the user currently has is 0, which does not allow for selling, and if the shares that the user want to sell is lesser or equal to 0, and I provide certain apologies. An example is to sell, for example, I want to sell 4 AAPL stock, and as you guys know, I already have 1 only. So if I sell, I'll be taken into an apology, which says that I'm not having a sufficient number of shares. So to the last function that is in the specification of the assignment, which is history. If we go back here and we click on history, we'll see all the transactions, and it might look weird because the shares in the sell part is gonna have negative values. And rest assured, as I already cited, that negative values indicate that the user is selling the absolute value of shares. That means, for example, if this is -1, it just basically means that I'm selling 1 stock, which is the absolute value of -1. Here I use a datetime library in Python, which gives me the exact time of the transaction. If we go back, see here, we see that I import the library from datetime, import datetime. And so the last feature, which is the personal touch, allows me to change the password. So this is basically like login. If I log out and this is the login page, I will see the directory that directs me to another HTML page with the /password route, which has 3 entries: username, old password, and new password. So the first 2 entries work exactly like login, just that it checks that there's input from username, there's input from old password, and those information fields are consistent. And this is a new password that the user wants to change. If I click on Bob, and the old password is 1234, and the new password is 12345, and I click on change, I'll be directed back to log in, and now I say Bob, and the password is 12345, and I am directed back to my index table. If I log out again and I click on the old password, it will direct me into the apology, which basically says that I have an invalid username and or password, which basically says that the password has already been changed. If we look at the change implementation of the function, we'll see that this is really much like login, but here I use the update SQL query, which allows me to change the password and redirect the user to the login route. Here, I must say that I want to put the change password in a login page because if I provide the change password in an index page or buy page or a sell page, an adversary might just take over the computer and change the password without providing the username and old password because those pages already have the login required. So this is a brief summary of the website that I implemented for CS50 Finance. I'm Viet, and this is Finance.